This is a mid-90s, 95, Searay Sea Rayder. It has a 120 horsepower, two-stroke vertical engine that drives a horizontal shaft jet pump. It's a little bit unique in that way that they have kind of a gearbox for the jet drive. These things are interesting, and being that this one's mine, that's right, it doesn't run. I did get to do a little bit of diagnostics on this boat before I purchased it as a non-running boat, and essentially it boiled down to some very bizarre electrical ignition type issues. The ignition timing was jumping all over the place. Sometimes the spark dropped out entirely. Once it even started up and ran backwards for a few revolutions, which made the starter motor make some really unhappy sounds. But in the end, something's going on with the electrical system, or at least with the ignition system. So let's dig into it, see if we can figure out what's going on, and get this thing back on the water. So what we found, this has the original flywheel, but the stator underneath has been replaced. So back in the 90s when Mercury made these engines, they made stators that were open, I guess you could say. They weren't all potted, and that's what this should have on it. Then at some point they switched to what everybody calls the Mercury red stators. Now for this electrical box CDI setup that's on this engine, if you're going to use a red stator, you need to get a whole kit, which, if I'm correct in what my research has brought me to, that kit consisted of some new box stuff down here and a new flywheel, because the magnets were positioned wrong for the red stator to fire the 3-cylinder or 4-cylinder, whatever this thing is, at the right time. So it's got the wrong stator in it, ultimately, is what it boils down to. So I've got a CDI electronic stator that is listed as working with this flywheel, because getting the CDI electronic stator was a whole lot cheaper than a whole flywheel and all the conversion stuff to make this red stator work. So let's get that flywheel taken off. Looks like a fairly new red stator. Fix this. That's busted off. So right now it doesn't advance timing. That just kind of floats wherever it feels like. So this is a CDI electronic stator. I have the part number on the screen. I got this used on eBay. You can get these brand new though. This stator is still made. But this one was being sold as a functional good stator, so hopefully it actually is. Let's see here. Gotta make sure that flywheel key is where it's meant to be. Otherwise, we'll have other timing problems. Okay, it's back in the slot. So here's our flywheel with our slot. We're gonna have that facing forward. Just drop it right down on. All right, there's a timing light. Here, you hold that. Yeah, thank you. Perfect. Right there. Okay, hold on. We're going to have to look into this. It seems we have no spark at all. So I don't know if there's some conglomeration of all those wires we got to fix up or what. Maybe now it's out of gas, or there's something wrong with this kill switch circuit. Let's see if it's the kill switch. There's a lot of electrical gremlins here, but it runs. All right, so a few things got done off camera. We rebuilt these Tillotson carbs, which is in another video. We've redone some of the wiring under the dash. And I just got this tool because we're about to set the ignition timing. I replaced the little nub here, so we are ready to do ignition timing. There's a whole list of instructions here. I'll see what I can do about putting this either on the screen or in the description. All about the specs for how you're supposed to do this, what you're supposed to do, and how it's all supposed to work. So, let's get started. The spec on here is 32 degrees before top dead center at cranking speed with the plugs out. So I can dial in 32 degrees, and then when my 0 degree line lines up with this at cranking speed, I know that's spot on 32 degrees. Sure, I could do it by making a mark over here and lining it up with the old school timing light. That would work just fine. That's how these have been done for decades. But with this fancy schmancy timing light, I might as well use it. I wonder if there's something wrong with the Revlimiter, because that would mess with that, wouldn't it? Now we got a spark again. I bet you there's something going on with that Revlimiter box, which could be throwing off our timing specs. All right, and again. That looks really close to spot on, maybe a little too far. I'm going to take just a couple turns back off of that. Be a little conservative. Two turns back off. And then we will find a way to snug our nut there. Okay. Spark plugs. I'm going to move you out of the way so that I can reach a bit better. And you're just going to have to trust me that I put the plugs back in this. So, when it starts up and runs, you'll never know if I put those spark plugs back in or not, I guess. I would call that pretty successful. Not seeing drips from the fuel. I am seeing a tremendous amount of smoke, which was actually a good thing. I guess our next step is we're going to pull this thing out and take it for a ride down the lake. All right, just about at the end of the no wake zone here. There's our no wake buoy. Once we get past that, we'll open it up and see if I got the right rev limiter and if the pump is healthy. So, who knows? It feels like there's something in the pump. Cavitating bad. Goes this speed nice. Isn't fast enough to register on the speedometer. Yeah, there's got to be something in the pump. We'll take it back, fix that leak, and crawl underneath and look up in the pump. Okay, so I found the problem, and it's not something in the jet pump, but rather lack of water, because we're getting air via the exhaust blowing out around this ride plate seal, because evidently it was not bolted in. And so I don't know whether I bent it down trying to get on plane, or it was bent and that was just what's causing the problems. So we've also got a leak around this through hull fitting. So I'm going to pull the ride plate off. We're going to pull this through hull fitting out and get this thing back on the water again and hopefully get on plane with it. This bolts underneath. The pump's intake grate goes in here and then it vents out the back there. And this seal is destroyed, which is letting air in and cavitating, but also the screws weren't all in this. So it had 2 screws here, 2 screws here. It was missing, I believe, these 2 and all 4 of these up here. So it bent right here. That bent down and was just scooping water up into the wrong places, causing all kinds of problems. So I've straightened this out pretty good, and I've got a brand new seal. So we're going to put this seal on here, put the ride plate back on, and I bought a bunch of the screws because these are kind of a goofy screw that these things use. Phillips head, and they've got the stuff on them. I got a bundle of those on eBay for like 10 bucks. I got like 30 screws, so got more than enough to do this, and more than enough to lose. So that's what's important. So let's put this seal on, get this thing back on here, and get back out to the lake and see how this thing runs. That's just falling apart. Is this big enough to go all the way around? I think it is. The jet boat runs so good now, and this thing is an absolute blast out on the water. If we were to go back and look at all this again, most likely the Revlimiter box being bad was the root cause of all the issues. But since another mechanic had already been in there and been messing with stuff, changed the stator out for an incompatible one, that added an extra wrench in the works for us to diagnose. And then the time it spent after that misdiagnosis certainly didn't do any help for the fuel lines, carburetor, and other stuff going on. And who knows what was going on with the ride plate screws missing. I don't know why you would ever take those out unless you were replacing that seal, which obviously hadn't been replaced. But all in all, this thing is running fantastic. We're gonna get it cleaned up, shined up, make it look a little nicer. Then all of my part will be done with this, and I can hand it off to somebody else who can get a lot of enjoyment out of this neat little jet boat. I hope you enjoyed watching our process and getting this thing back on the water again and ready for the next riding season. Thanks for watching.